By the time I met Tyler, I had already heard about him from several friends, both male and female, at the small, liberal arts college I attended. He was strange, they said. Very friendly, but very physical. He would grab girls and pull them into his lap, and when they tried to get away, he would laugh and hold them tighter until one of our male friends forced him to stop. I made a mental note to avoid him. I was sitting in the school's cafe with one of my male friends, who he knew, when he approached and tried to grab me for the first time. I don't remember what the conversation was or how long we had been sitting near him, but when he reached for me, I instinctively pulled away. He grabbed me anyway and pulled me towards him, and when I told him to stop touching me, he began laughing. He didn't sexually assault me. His hands were on my arm, but when he laughed, his eyes were cold and humorless, and his grip on my arm tightened. I wrenched myself away and ran out of the cafe. When a concerned male friend caught up to me, I said, "There's something wrong with him. He's gonna hurt someone." My friend walked me to Kmart, where I bought pepper spray. The second time Tyler tried to grab me, he approached a group of people I was standing with and tried to put his arm around me. I turned around and said, "Don't touch me. Don't touch any of my friends. We don't like it. You make us uncomfortable." My voice carried, and people turned to look. He looked shocked, and his grip loosened. I left the cafeteria. He avoided me after that, and I thought that it was over until I went back to the dorm one night and found that none of my friends were there. When I texted them, they said they were in the school gym and I should come. At the gym, I found around 7 girls standing around with the school's dean. Tyler, I was told, had approached one of my friends in the gym, grabbed her by the hair, and forced her head towards his crotch. Every single one of the girls in the gym that day said that Tyler had, at one point or another, grabbed them and held on, refusing to stop touching them when they said no. None of them had reported it because he hadn't actually sexually assaulted them. He was just aggressive. But until that night, he hadn't crossed the line. The girls, including myself, all wrote down our experiences with him and gave our testimonies to the dean. Tyler was expelled. I never saw him again, and hopefully never will. This happened in May of 2015 in California, which will help those of you who are familiar. I had graduated college in June of 2014, moved back to my old hometown, and started a consulting company with my boyfriend, which was going very well. We had just finished a contract in the Bay Area, and were beginning a new one about 8 hours south in Torrance. He moved down here first to start setting up, while I took care of loose ends at our closing contract before moving down to meet him. The day comes, and I pack my car and head south down the I-5. For the uninitiated, it's a straight highway with little in the way of scenery aside from the occasional strip mall, and its monotone has a reputation for putting drivers to sleep at the wheel. I pass a strip mall with gas and a fast food joint, and decide to fill my car and my stomach. I go to park in the food venue's parking lot, but it's completely full, so I park across the street at a hotel, which at the time I didn't think anything of. I go inside and eat my meal, and then cross the street to get back to my car. I'm well into the hotel parking lot when a pickup truck pulls down the aisle and cuts off my path and stops, with the passenger's side facing me. The driver is alone, and a clean-cut white male in his mid-30s. I don't remember anything about him, except that he looked very generic and buttoned up. The way he pulled in front of me to block my path didn't initially set off alarm bells, as he has done it pretty organically. He rolls down the window, and the dialogue follows. "Excuse me, miss, but could you please tell me where the grocery store is in town?" "I'm sorry. I'm not from here, so I couldn't say." "Oh, where are you from?" Good question. I don't know. Not here, though." I didn't say that to be rude. I had just moved through so many cities at that point, and was on my way to a new one. I wasn't sure how to answer. He laughs and makes a joke, and then asks me where I'm headed. I mentioned that I'm moving. I will say, he was very charismatic, and at this point, I just think he's trying to flirt with me. And if I hadn't been so exhausted or in a relationship, on another day it might have worked. He makes another comment about how unpleasant moving can be, and then gives a warm chuckle and extends his hand to shake mine and goes, "Well, I'm glad I got to meet you. I'm Scott." If you recall, the truck is in front of me, with the passenger side facing me. I actually take a step forward to grab his hand, and then got the delayed response of every alarm bell that should have gone off earlier. I'm in a hotel parking lot. He asks me a question that establishes I don't know where I am, another question that establishes I'm alone, and another question that establishes I'm not expected at my destination for many hours. The thing that connected all these synopses is, when he extended his hand, he didn't make even the faintest effort to make it accessible to me. He didn't lean over the seat or move toward me in any way. His hand was hovering comfortably over the center console, waiting for me to grasp it, which in order to do so, I would have had to lean well into the car. Again, I had already taken a step toward him and begun to raise my hand to take his when the sirens went off. I rocked backwards, back to where I was standing, and I just remember looking in his eyes for what felt like forever, feeling everything click into place, while also half convinced my imagination was just running wild. His hand still waiting, I lowered mine and felt my eyes slightly narrow with suspicion, and slowly said, "I'm going to walk away from your car now, Scott." Boom. Truck burns rubber with thick gray smoke as the guy guns it out of the hotel lot at 100 miles per hour. He must have fucking floored it. Regrettably smart on his end, because I didn't have the license number or anything to offer the police. In the immediate minutes following the event, I felt relieved, but hadn't really perceived the full weight of what happened. Unfortunately for me, I had many more hours to think back and analyze the whole interaction to shreds. The car was somewhat lifted. There could have easily been another person, or even 2 to 3 other people, hiding inside. When he had pulled me in, would I have been injected with something? Then my mind just kept creating all these scenarios where I wake up hours later, and nobody would even know, or I went missing, or possibly not noticed for most of the day. I still get creeped out, thinking about how close I came to taking his hand, and how fortunate I was that I didn't allow my reaction to be driven by manners, as criminals often take advantage of. So, Scott, let's definitely not meet again. I was around 19, walking the mile home from work to my dorm. I lived in a city, and the road I was walking down was a 6-lane highway with stoplights. It was dark out, but only 9 or so, and I was never really concerned when walking home. So then the car pulls up and starts driving beside me, inching along. He's in the furthest right lane, impeding traffic with his slow driving, but everyone drives terrible here, so nothing too unusual. He rolled down his window and called out to me. I'm used to ignoring catcalls on my way home. Happened literally every day, so I ignored him for a minute, but he kept calling out and started to explain that he was a firefighter driving home from work. He said he could tell I probably was headed to the university and to let him give me a ride for that last mile. I said no thanks. He said, "Seriously, I swear I'm a firefighter. Let me show you my badge." He flashes something at me. He says he was hearing reports before he left work that it was about to start storming bad. He insists, saying that he really doesn't feel right about letting me walk home when it's about to start storming, and to trust him that he's a firefighter. I said I appreciate it, but no thanks. I've continued walking this whole time, and he continued inching his car along until the latest rejection, and then he speeds off, and I think hopefully that he's leaving, but instead, he pulls into a hotel drive about 5 yards up, blocking the sidewalk. I keep walking, but walk near the road to avoid his car, but as I'm passing, he starts to get out. I was not really worried yet. I thought this guy was a nice stranger and a firefighter. He hadn't given me too huge of a creep vibe, and we get a lot of different types down here. I just don't take rides from strangers for obvious reasons. But then, the security guard of the hotel started walking towards us, asking if everything was okay, and Mr. Firefighter got a look of panic and hightailed it out of there in a flash. Then I got scared because it meant he was lying that whole time, and I fell for it. He really wanted me in his car, and he definitely planned something immoral. Doesn't help my nightmares that the city this happened in, like many cities, struggles with problems of human trafficking. I was a single mother of 2 young boys. We didn't have a lot of money, so we would often drive down to a small state park along the Oregon Coast Highway. We would park the car and walk a trail through the woods to the beach. We usually had the whole beach and trail to ourselves, with the exception of an occasional surfer. This was almost the case the last time we were there. It was a Wednesday. We had a good time talking about the trees, berries, and even posing for a few pictures. We rolled up our pant legs and explored the tide pools. It was fun, but we were tired and ready to go home. On the way back, a man came running towards us from another trail. When he stopped, his face was about a foot away from mine. I hadn't seen him as he first approached, therefore didn't have time to realize I should be scared. I smiled at him and said, "Excuse me." As I started walking, it dawned on me. He should have seen us long before he came up on us. He wasn't dressed for a jog either. I started to think of what I would do if he came after us. There was no way to outrun him with my 2 little ones. My kids were talking to me, but I was so scared I couldn't think to answer. So I decided to sing the little song from their Yoshi video game. Be careful, be careful. Over and over, singing faster and faster, trying to make them walk faster. Finally, we returned to the car. I lifted them into the passenger seat through the driver's side. We didn't even need to have seatbelts or a change of clothes. We just had to leave, now. The following Wednesday, I received a phone call from my mom. 2 workers had been shot in the head at the park. One lived, the other, I knew, had not. It turns out, that man had been released from prison 2 weeks before. He had stolen their pickup. When he was caught, he claimed he didn't shoot them. He described another vehicle that he claimed was there. It was a perfect description of my car. Background info. Me and my roommate, females, late 20s, best friends, just moved into this apartment, and yesterday was our 1-month anniversary of living there. It's in Ontario. Great neighborhood, a little touristy. Not a bad area. The building is in great shape, but old, and many of the tenants have told us they've lived there for 20 years plus. We were assured the locks were changed before we moved in. I have a key, as does my roomie, the old couple that takes care of the building, and the general maintenance guy. Story. I was the last to leave the apartment around 8 a.m., and I locked the door. My roomie got home around 4:30 p.m., unlocked the door, changed, and left again to run errands. We both got home again around 6 p.m. First thing I did was go to my room to change out my work clothes, and I noticed that my closet looked messy. I had a small box of knickknacks that looked like it had fallen onto the floor of my closet. However, the box was then put back up, and some of my dirty clothes from my basket were inside. It looked like someone had rummaged through my dirty laundry and tossed clothes out of their way, which probably caused the box, full of stuff, to fall in the first place. On top of that, brand new clothes I had just purchased were still hung up, but hanging inside the box, like someone was quickly sliding clothes on the clothing bar and it flipped some into the box. Because I'm very neat and tidy, I knew right away that this was not right. I did not do this, so I began to rationalize. Did my roomie do this? No, why would she do this? She wouldn't do this. If she needed something, she'd ask. Did I do this? Maybe I threw my pants in the closet and it landed in the box. Maybe I did leave this box on the floor. Oh well, weird. But anyways, essentially my inner dialogue. Cut to about 9:45 p.m. I'm in my room and all of a sudden, I hear roomie call my name. Loudly, and in a tone of voice I've never heard before. I go to her room and she said, "I found the gift you left me." I say I don't understand. The present in my pillow. I look at her from the hall and say I have no idea what she's talking about. I go into her room and on her bed is a dildo. My dildo. I grab it and say, "That's mine. Why is it in here?" She said, "It was in my pillow." "You didn't put it there?" I tell her it was mixed in with my laundry basket. That's where I leave it, to remind myself to wash it within a day or so. Now the wheels are turning, and things are coming together. Someone must have let themselves into our apartment with a key, went into my room, looked through my dirty laundry, found the sex toy mixed in there, and put it inside her pillowcase so she'd find it when she went to bed. After being in shock for a few minutes, the reality sunk in and I started to cry. Someone had access to our apartment for at least the last month. We decided to talk to the building's managers, the old couple, and while they seemed to want to comfort me because I was an emotional mess, the husband mostly played it down, saying it was probably a joke, and if we gave a copy to the key to anyone, I think it was part culture that made them downplay it. We did call the cops, and they came within an hour or so. They took all of our info, and they had a look around. Honestly, they can't do much, and I figured that. At least we have a paper trail. I definitely mentioned the handyman guy as the one they should talk to. They're going to follow up with some of the residents and the building staff. I also watched the property manager and that handyman change my locks this AM. If anything seems out of place, then it's very clear it's either the staff or someone who has access to their apartment keys. We're getting a camera. That way we can attach somewhat discreetly, and hopefully it never catches anyone that shouldn't be in our apartment.